Hi, my name is Providence Goins, and I'm with Retain Each Property Management Company. I'm in operations.
Hello, I'm Ken Goins. I'm with Retain Each Property Management Asset Manager. So I'm your regional asset manager, actually. So I handle Buffalo, Rochester, and Syracuse market.
So today we're going to be discussing expensive mistakes landlords make, what to not do.
Right. And obviously these things, what not to do, has a dollar value attached to it. So when we say not do these things, we're not just saying don't do them. We're saying that if you do them, there will be a cost. And just to start off, one of those things is understanding the role of your property manager. What we're experiencing in New York State, and I'm pretty sure the rest of the country, is people don't understand what a property manager is. They naturally assume it's a guy or girl with a hammer and a plot.
Yeah, a lot of people call themselves property managers, but they're not necessarily property managers. They could be people who are mechanics or have a skill set that may be useful to property management, but they're not actually a property manager.
Right. Like in New York State, to be actual property manager, you actually have to be a licensed real estate agent. I experience a lot of investors who don't know that. Every investor that I talk to, they're always shocked. Maybe not the people watching this video, the ones watching this video.
And they have some knowledge.
Right. Well, we just said it. But the investors I talk to, they're like, oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. Now, how is that an expensive mistake, though?
Well, it's an expensive mistake because if you hire the wrong person or the wrong company to represent you as a property manager, when really I'm just a handyman, you put yourself in a situation where I can, one, give you bad counsel or bad advice, two, legal exposure if I misrepresent you in any kind of way at all, or if I mishandle a tenant because I didn't receive the licensing, the training, and I have zero accountability because I'm not licensed. So if I was an unlicensed individual acting as a property manager.
And, maintenance is one small part of property management. So that's, the knowledge set that they may have, they're limited with the laws in New York State, the rent collection, the eviction processes, developing leases, all those things that go into property management. Maintenance is one part of it, and it's an important part, but it's not the whole picture.
But I'll say this. We have to also be careful to the people who sound like they know what they're talking about, right? Without actually checking what the person is actually talking about or taking the time to do a little due diligence. Just because someone sounds confident, that doesn't mean they are knowledgeable. So that's why that licensed real estate agent thing does play a small part in it. But we talked about it earlier that when you don't do these things, by vetting your PM company, there's a cost associated to that. I can't put a number to that. I can't attach a dollar value to that because it can go from a minimum of a couple $100 in fines and a lawsuit that can be associated with you and your actual personal income, right? It could be tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars, all because you put the wrong person in the wrong position because you misunderstood what you needed or the support that you needed. So
yeah, this is your asset. This is very important. This is your investment, and you want to have it in good hands.
Yes. And that will tie into the next topic, selecting the right real estate agent.
Yes, that's huge. Sometimes when you select a real estate agent that doesn't have a lot of knowledge of investment properties, that can also be costly.
Absolutely. I mean, you gotta take the time to understand what a real estate agent is, right? First of all, I would take the time to even look into how to become a real estate agent and just get an idea of what that is. And what you'll see is it simply is a course that someone can take online at their own leisure, passing a state test with some questions, paying a fee, clearing a background check. The background is just simply making sure I'm not a criminal, and I get a license to sell real estate. So those are the qualifications that are needed to become a licensed real estate agent. Now, yes, it's important to have those things tying back to what we were just saying, putting the right people in the right roles. At least that real estate agent has some basic knowledge of liability, right? At least incorrectly or mishandle a customer. But if you get a real estate agent and you count on them for investment advice, that's dangerous.
Yeah. Can you give an example of something that's cost?
Absolutely. A yes man or a yes woman. When you talk to that agent, you're counting on them or relying on them to give you investment advice. When I may have never had any investment background, right? So prior to my career, I'm not saying this applies to me, I'll give you an example. Prior to my career in real estate, I may have worked in the restaurant industry, or I may have worked in the manufacturing industry. And now you're relying on me to tell you how to manage an investment. And all I have is my opinion. Because remember, my state licensing was just some questions.
Yeah.
And now you're going off my opinion. And when I say yes man and yes woman, oh yeah, great, it's a good deal. Oh, that's perfect, yeah. Yes. Because I am incentivized by the commission.
Even having your property manager or your real estate investor, whoever you select to manage the closing of your investment, walking through the property with you to be able to answer some of those questions, because property managers are knowledgeable in what to do and what not to do and what's a good investment, and they can point out some things for you.
Oh yeah. So show you some examples. Well, we've had a scenario when a real estate agent placed a tenant for an owner. This is prior to bringing us on board as a property manager. The owner was using the real estate agent as a property manager. At least they didn't make the first mistake, right, of hiring somebody that was operating outside of their licensure or capacity.
Yeah, so they were on the right track. They were doing it right. They were on the right track, yeah.
But the second portion that we're talking about is where they missed it at. So they hired a real estate agent to also manage their property. So the real estate agent not only sold them the property, but also agreed to manage the property. The investor and the real estate agent managed the property however they chose to manage it. When the investor reached out to us, the story that the investor shared was, I have not collected rents in a few months. I don't know who the tenant is. I don't know anything. My realtor who I've been working with is a friend of mine, and I don't know where we're at. I made contact with the realtor, and the realtor tells me, yeah, I placed this tenant. The investor is a friend of mine, so there's some agreements there. They're friends. That's good. They never met. And this tenant is having a difficult time with paying the rent. And we just need your help, Ken. So I go to the property. I think the tenant was a beautiful person, very kind. And this tenant explains to me, yeah, Ken, there's been all kinds of repairs that I've been letting the real estate agent know about or the realtor about. And the realtor has not been able to solve the problem, get anything fixed or anything in a timely manner at all. They tell me they're working on it, but it never got done. Understood. That's fine. We'll get it handled. If you don't mind me asking, no one seems to know, do you have a copy of your lease? She said, we never signed one. Okay. Well, how much is the rent? She said, Sting never agreed to that. I don't know. He was going to tell me. Well, how much have you been paying him? Well, she said, I haven't. I paid him $1,000 when I first moved in. No security deposit. He paid $1,000 when he first moved in. Now, the owner never received that $1,000. The real estate agent took it as their commission to place the tenant. Do you see where the lapse is happening?
Yeah. Now? So there's some misalignment on communication, expectations, all these things. There's a lot of confusion there.
So it ties back into the point of this whole conversation, right, is expensive mistakes not to make. So in that scenario, because they had the licensed person acting as a property manager, but the person who was acting as a property manager wasn't seasoned in investments, that owner lost the minimum of 2 to 3 months worth of rent. So that's one cost there.
What's another costly mistake?
Security deposits. That's a big one.
Yeah.
So, oh my God, too many investors are closing. Just for everyone's information, when you're purchasing an investment vehicle being property, and there's tenants involved, tenants typically, or they should, have placed a security deposit down when they moved into the property. You would expect that too. You buy this investment property that the tenants will put a security deposit down. When you close, that needs to be discussed.
Yeah.
That needs to be
A lot of times that's left out of the conversation. People, they get a property or an investment or an asset, however you want to look at it. They get these properties and they don't know the tenant's name. They haven't seen rent rolls. They don't have a lease agreement. They don't have a lot of information on the tenant. And so that's, the security deposit is another part of the puzzle that's missing. And so they get this wonderful asset and they think they're buying $2,000 worth of income. And really what they're getting is someone who may or may not be paying, or may have occupied the property and may have been occupying the property without paying for quite some time. We don't know because that information is missing.
And keep in mind, the tenant will put you on the hook for the security deposit if they were a good tenant, right? And when they move out, they're going to come to you and ask you, the new owner, for their security deposit. So if you don't have that arranged prior to closing, you could be in a situation where you could either end up paying additional rent back to the tenant because it wasn't discussed prior. But there's a time to discuss security deposit, actually, folks. But you want to discuss that after the numbers have been agreed upon.
Right.
So far, I think we named what? We named the first one, which was not getting somebody who's operating outside of their capacity, right? Which we couldn't even put a number on that.
Right.
The second one was not getting a knowledgeable real estate agent. And now we're on a third, just locate the security deposits. So if I had to put a dollar value on all those mistakes, we're going to subtract the first one because the dollar value is infinite. We're easily looking at $5,000 to $10,000 in mistakes just by not knowing to ask these specific questions or getting this information.
And a lot of times when you do find someone who is helping you, a real estate agent or something like that, they could be a very good real estate agent and it's not done maliciously. It's just that the information or the not knowing to ask these questions because they don't deal a lot in investment properties.
So the last few things we just discussed, the first one, bringing somebody on board who's operating outside of their capacity, can't put a dollar value on that because the risk is infinite. The second portion, thousands of dollars just by having a property manager or an asset manager involved at time of closing because there's additional credits that you may not be taking advantage of. The last thing that we talked about was a security deposit. Knowing where that is and how is that going to be translated into the deal is extremely important. Another thing we want to discuss too is rent rolls. That kind of ties into security deposits, right? Not only do we need to know where the security deposit is going to be at in the deal, but the rent rolls, for everybody that doesn't know, it's a ledger. It shows you when the tenant pays and how much they pay. But there's a couple other pieces on the ledger that people need to understand. The most actually more valuable than when the tenant pays and how much they pay. It's how they pay. HOW, how they pay. Does the tenant pay cash every month? How are they getting the cash to you? Is it a money order? I mean, you need to understand how this tenant pays because it tells you a lot about who the tenant is. If this tenant pays the end of the month before the rent is due, okay, this tenant seems to be responsible. If this tenant is paying the 13th of the month when the rent is agreed upon on the first, why? Yeah. But if this tenant is paying small portions, why? You want to be able to ask why, and you can't ask why unless you understand how, and that is how they pay.
And a lot of these things are discovered obviously after the sale. So a lot of times investors don't know to ask these questions and the real estate agents may not even know to ask those questions. Even if they're a good real estate agent, they're not doing anything maliciously or anything like that. It's just that sometimes these questions aren't even known to ask if you don't deal a lot with investment properties. So sometimes you end up with expensive mistakes and naturally there's frustration there when you end up buying a property and you're expecting a certain amount of income or your expectations is this and then your expectations are not met when you're met with all these challenges with trying to figure out the program or trying to figure out where the rent is or what the lease agreement says. Is there a lease? Is there not a lease? There's a lot of confusion there. So it's good to have someone on your side who knows what questions to ask and knows how to deal with investment properties.
Absolutely. One of the biggest problems we have is a misalignment in what you're expecting, because what you're expecting should tie into your business plan, okay? Your business plan is your property. That's your business. What you're expecting needs to align with that. And if your ideal of what kind of tenant is going to be living in that property is misaligned with what you're expecting, it can cause a problem. We have investors buying property in D-class neighborhoods. For those who don't know, a D-class neighborhood has different kind of...
it's distressed.
But distress, well, she can say that, right? But distress can look like many different ways. It can be high crime, it could be low, it has to be maintained well, right? You're buying property in D-class neighborhoods because the price is attractive. Yeah. But they're not considering the neglect, they're not considering the type of person who is okay with living in that environment.
Correct. Yeah.
Right? If I'm okay with living in that environment, you need to understand my tenant profile, my consumer profile. I'm a consumer. You need to understand who I am.
Well, you can afford. So a lot of times, some neighborhoods that I call maybe distressed, where a owner or investor may want a high rent, they want a good credit score. Their expectations for the tenant doesn't match what actually can afford to live in that neighborhood. Maybe you have to compromise on the credit score. Maybe you have to bring your rents down to match the rest of the market in that area. And if you paid a higher price than the market demands or whatever the market can handle for that property in that neighborhood, then you may end up pricing yourself with rent out of the people who can actually afford to live in that neighborhood.
Yeah, exactly. And you can create a bad experience for first you. You create a bad experience for you. You create a bad experience for the tenant. And you also create a bad experience for your PM company because now they have to be the bearer of bad news.
Yeah.
Right? Because the real estate agent, going back into the bullet point earlier, the second one of or getting an inexperienced real estate agent, they helped you develop the wrong roadmap to success.
Yeah.
And now the PM company, which you should have been working with to begin with for an investment property, is now having to help you heal for a mistake. And just so you know, in this business, there's nothing solved the same day.
Right.
Everything from
timing
is timing. From removing a bad tenant to a costly repair, everything is time, and none of it is the same day. So that's important that you understand what kind of tenant you're going to be dealing with the property in the area that you're going to be acquiring. So that's pretty big. That also ties into our next topic, what we call loss of lease. Loss, L-O-S-S of lease. When you are not aware of the type of tenant you're going to be dealing with, and you don't understand the market that you're buying into, and no one prepares you, your numbers are kind of off. Your math won't math. And what I mean by loss of lease is the amount of time that your property is going to be vacant, the amount of time that the tenant might not pay rent. That's a real thing, especially if you're buying the inexpensive properties. It will not always pay rent. I've been in sales and finance for most of my adult life, and let me tell you, no matter what industry that I'm in or we're in, it's hard to beat Christmas time.
Yeah.
People prioritize gifts, entertainment over a lot of things. So if you don't plan for that, you'll find yourself in a situation where you won't be able to participate in the season of giving because you're giving your resources to a property that is not producing the income that you expected.
Yeah. So if your budget is so tight and you're expecting a full 12 months worth of rent, if that's what your plan is, and you're not expecting those 4 months of non-payment, possible 4 months of non-payment or even more, then sometimes the numbers, that misalignment can really throw you off and you have a bad experience, or you may not can afford to do the fixes or the repairs that are needed to maintain a property. And it gets pretty stressful for some investors. I'm
gonna be transparent with you. I know we were attaching dollar values to things that people should and should not do. Just in these few moments, we're probably at $50,000 to $100,000. And that's still not even considering the risk of the first one, having the wrong person operating as your property management company. That's how much value that you just received here just now. What do you do with that information? You use it. Take the time to better interview your potential property manager and also understand their limitations and you need to understand your property management company because they're going to help you understand the property and understand the tenant because those are two different entities. The tenant and the property are two different things. And if you don't understand that, you will learn in the form of loss of income. And when I say loss of income, I ain't talking about missed income opportunity. I'm talking about income you're going to spend additionally to what you already spent to purchase the property.
Yeah. So hopefully these tips have been helpful. This information is useful to you. We really want our investors to win. When they win, we all win. So having a good property manager means that you have someone who's advocating for you because, believe me, we don't make money if you don't make money. Unlike a real estate deal where it's a transaction, the investment is done, the transaction is done, they make their percentage off of the sale and you part ways. And now the property is yours to manage, to do whatever, and making some of these costly mistakes have caused a lot of people some heartache.
Emphasis on heart and headaches. Yeah, the heart and your head affected by this. Thank you so much for your time. We look forward to having these conversations with you guys. We typically have them in the office with us and the rest of our team members. Yeah. But just sitting here and us having this back and forth and you participating has been a lot to us. We look forward to working with you. We're excited. Please do not hesitate to get an instant quote from us. We are open Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. We have our sales team operating on the weekends as well, which is Saturday, Sunday at your rest, as I suggest for yourself. But listen, we look forward to working with you. Can't wait to work with you. We look forward to exceeding your expectations. As she said, making the investor successful, us people, but most importantly, we're not making the tenant, which is supporting your investment, successful.
Yes.
We look forward to doing that. So don't hesitate. I'm pretty sure somewhere in this video, somewhere there's going to be opportunity for you to reach out to us. We're here to receive your call. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.